Hello everybody, this is a podcast for the Centre for Public Integrity, Australia's leading democracy research institute, established in 2019. We have just heard that the National Anti-Corruption Commission has delivered the findings of its eminent person, Geoffrey Nettle, ACKC, on the Robodebt scandal. Joining me now are two anti-corruption warriors, Geoffrey Watson, SC, former senior counsel assisting the Independent Commission Against Corruption, now adjunct professor at the University of Notre Dame. Geoffrey is a director of the Centre for Public Integrity, and Associate Professor Will Partlett of Melbourne Law School and Stephen Charles Fellow at the Centre for Public Integrity. Let me just get this going by reading, it's not very long, the release of the National Anti-Corruption Commission. As a result of the decision made by its independent reconsideration delegate, Geoffrey Nettle, ACKC, on 10 February 2025, the Commission will investigate the 6 referrals it received from the Royal Commission into the Robodebt scheme. The purpose of the investigation is to determine whether or not any of the 6 referred persons engaged in corrupt conduct. Consistent with its usual practice, the Commission does not publish reasons for commencing an investigation, as doing so may prejudice the investigations, disclose information which the Commission is required by law to keep confidential, compromise investigative pathways, and/or unfairly impact reputations and rights of individuals to impartial adjudication. The Commission is now making arrangements to ensure the impartial and fair investigation of the referrals, as it did with the appointment of Mr Nettle as Independent Reconsideration Delegate. The Commissioner and those Deputy Commissioners who were involved in the original decision not to investigate the referrals will not participate in the investigation. This is the National Anti-Corruption Commission, as you know, has been in operation since July last year, and this was its most contentious decision not to investigate the Robodebt referrals from the Robodebt Royal Commission. Come to you, Geoffrey Watson, first. What was your reaction when you heard this news?
Oh, well, I'm very happy that what obviously needed to be done apparently will be done. But then again, I have a look at this statement and it's very puzzling. I mean, think about it now. Why were they sitting on Mr Nettle's decision for 8 days? I see that it dropped just around about 5 minutes before the interest rate decision. It seems as though that old expression, taking out the trash, might work. Also, I see that they gave more excuses for why they're not telling us anything about it than actual reasons for.
We'll get to that.
Yeah.
Will Partlett, your reaction?
Well, I mean, I echo Geoffrey's point that this is extremely, and this is the right decision, that the NACC has made the right decision on the referrals, and that it is a very important decision to be made for the individuals who were adversely affected by this scheme. But I also share the puzzlement with the press release, and I mean, this is surely a special, exceptional case where we are, as the public, entitled to, first of all, understanding the reasons for why former Justice Nettle has reconsidered this decision, as well as much more detail on how will this investigation be run, how will the commissioner and his deputies recuse themselves or take themselves out of this investigation process, which is going to involve all kinds of questions, which we can discuss. Should there be public hearings on these referrals? To what extent will they use coercive powers to investigate this? So there's all kinds of questions about how this is going to be set up from now, and none of these questions have been answered. So it's an important first step, but boy, does it raise a lot of questions about how we're going to go forward from here.
Well, let's go into these questions. The first one is the appointment of the investigator. Who makes that call? Commissioner Brereton of the National Anti-Corruption Commission, does he make the appointment, or is there provision? Because when you read the release, they all have to recuse themselves from any involvement in the investigation, which has now been overturned by their inaction was overturned by the Nettle decision. Who makes the appointment? Geoffrey, can you help us?
Well, I think it's very obvious that nobody on the existing executive have any say in it at all. It's got to go to somebody independent, and how that is done is probably by taking it right outside the current regime and maybe removing it to the Attorney General to make a decision. But
you're not talking about another judicial inquiry separate from the...
No. Just the decision as to who will conduct the investigation. Now, I happen to know that Professor Partlett has looked at the legislation and come up with a view about it.
Professor Partlett?
Well, I can't claim this myself. This is research done by our two board members, Michael Barker and Margaret White, but they have found a provision that the minister could use. It's Section 243 of the NACC Act itself, so the legislation creating the National Anti-Corruption Commission, which allows the minister in this case, Mark Dreyfus, to appoint an acting commissioner by legislative instrument that would allow this acting commissioner essentially to take over this in robo-debt referrals completely, so that there would be a separate inquiry under this acting commissioner on this front. And that, I think, would be a very good way to go forward, and it would completely take out any involvement from Commissioner Brereton and his deputies in this investigation that's going forward.
Well, I'm sure all those following this from the media will get an answer from Attorney General Dreyfus pretty shortly. But any person appointed to carry out this investigation into what I call the Robodebt 6, names redacted, would be operating under the NACC Act, Will?
They would be, yeah, that's right. They would be operating under this provision of the NACC Act that allows for an acting commissioner to take over the roles of the commissioner in certain circumstances, and hopefully in this case in particular cases, because we wouldn't think that Brereton and his commission and his deputies would continue to run the other aspects of NACC, but it just on this specific Robodebt 6 referrals, we'd have an acting commissioner operating under the act, which would be appointed by the minister, in this case Mark Dreyfus, and they would be working on the investigation. That acting commissioner would be working on that investigation solely themselves. And
Geoffrey Watson, there's the question of public hearings. Now, as we all discussed before, the deformity, as Anthony Wheely, the chair of the Centre for Public Integrity, have called it, in the NACC Act, was this high bar for public hearings. Is there sufficient justification for whomever is appointed to conduct this investigation to go immediately to public hearings?
Absolutely. You can't imagine a scandal bigger than the Robodebt scandal. I'd like to point out that it's gone through a royal commission. It's been front page news day after day. But the point here is we're not just talking about the huge amounts of money. The sad aspect is this episode cost human lives. It never gets more serious than this. We're talking about public sector corruption, then this is exceptional and it warrants public hearings. We should be satisfied with nothing less. I might say Catherine Holmes conducted her Royal Commission in public, so should this.
Well, do you agree with that, Will?
I do agree, and I would just add that there's a systemic issue that arises in Robodebt that we see across many other areas, which needs to be ventilated publicly, which is public servants trying to anticipate the will of the government and then following that and setting up basically procedures and programs on that basis. That is something that is outside that the public servants should not be doing, and that Robodebt shows how dangerous and problematic it could be. So that needs to be discussed as well, because we need to be able to stop this type of action so that this kind of thing doesn't keep happening into the future. So I would fully agree this is an exceptional case.
And Will, can I just add, from a lawyer's point of view, the fact that lawyers look as though they were tailoring their legal advice to suit what their masters wanted was especially disturbing aspect.
Not just the public servants, but the legal advice.
Yes.
But just remind our viewers and listeners, Will, on the definitions of corrupt conduct. I know we've canvassed it in a previous webinar, the definitions of corrupt conduct, which would make this justified, not just an exercise in debt recovery, which seems to be an honourable pursuit, but where the public servants involved are alleged to have buckled to political pressure.
Yeah, well, the definition of corrupt conduct is broad, as it has always been in the Australian integrity tradition. It is any public conduct by a public official that is a breach of the public trust. And in this case, we see clearly this is a breach of the public trust when public servants are ignoring law, ignoring legal advice, pushing lawyers to give certain types of legal advice when they are setting up programs that they think the minister wants or that they anticipate the minister wants so that they can be promoted. So that is the kind of a clear breach of the public trust. And as Anthony's saying, this is the kind of thing we see across a number of different areas, not just in Robodebt. So this needs to be ventilated and called out as corrupt, as maladministration, and as actually the government hurting individuals in its exercise of public power.
We're not talking necessarily about criminality, though, are we?
Not necessarily. Of course, it could include criminality, but often corrupt conduct and breaches of the public trust reach what we call gray corruption. Jobs for mates, the kinds of things we see here, where the government, they're operating within the kind of realm of criminal law, but they're not actually, but they're engaging in actions they're deeply problematic to the public trust and to this trust relationship they have with the people in exercising public power. Now,
Geoffrey, Catherine Holmes, her Royal Commission redacted the names of the 6 referees. We all understand one includes a politician, but the other 5, I think, are identified as public servants. Would a appointed commissioner or an appointed investigator maintain those redactions? Because when you look at the release, the NACC doesn't want to compromise the investigative pathways and I quote, unfairly impact reputations and rights of individuals to impartial adjudication. Now, when you were with the New South Wales ICAC, the persons of interest names were published.
Absolutely.
How do we get over that redaction?
You just remove the redaction. There is absolutely no reason to keep the name secret. What the point of it was to protect them so that the matter could be referred by Commissioner Holmes onto NACC and that they would investigate it. Now that NACC has it, there's no reason to keep the name secret. By the way, you hear a lot about the destruction of reputations and the like. That can easily be covered by reminding everybody these are merely allegations at this stage. We're looking at them. And along the way, if evidence emerges which clears somebody, an announcement to that effect.
So this gets over the constant criticism of anti-corruption commissions as show trials.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I always thought that was a little bit of a silly thing to say about corruption inquiries. For example, except where children or other vulnerable people are involved, we know the names of people who are on trial for serious crimes. What's the difference?
Well, they've all got to walk into court with their lawyers if they're not in the slammer.
Yeah.
So what do you think about that, Will? Is there no impediment to whomever is appointed as the investigator to publish the names at the get-go?
Yeah, I agree with Geoffrey. I mean, I would also say they have a reasonable opportunity to respond. I expect the Robodebt 6 will all have very good lawyers to help them navigate the process and to push back. These are not vulnerable individuals in any way, shape, or form, and they are public officials who've exercised public power in a way that, at least now, Geoffrey Nettle has told us, rises to the level of potentially of corrupt conduct. They should. I think that it's absolutely justifiable in this case for this investigation to now release who these individuals are, and for them, and knowing again that until this investigation is finished, we haven't actually got any findings yet, but that it's okay for this process now to be made more open. Because I do think more broadly that the way this is to be handled is the National Anti-Corruption Commission needs to do a slightly better job of actually publicizing and talking about what it's doing in this, given the exceptional nature of this investigation.
The point to be made about damage to reputation is that those people so named to be under investigation by the National Anti-Corruption Commission are granted legal representation, I think at the public expense, and they have every right to and will receive the procedural fairness involved in an investigation. That's right?
Absolutely.
So the question is for us on the timeline, when could we expect some action? I mean, this has been going on for 2 years now since the Holmes Royal Commission.
Oh, it's awful. It's got to go back to the Minister, Mr Dreyfus. He should make a decision. He should be able to appoint a commissioner within a week. There are a number of people. I mean, I could list half a dozen of suitable people from around Australia. You'd probably be looking for somebody with judicial experience in a matter this serious. But they're willing and they're ready and they're able. He could announce that within a week, I would imagine. And I think a harder thing is for the person who takes over to actually design their investigation. And that'll mean using NACC staff, but they'll have to get untainted NACC staff and use NACC facilities.
And NACC's got a hearing room, hasn't it?
Oh, yes, of course. They'll have all of that available to them. Mind you, NACC's got a hearing room. From what I know as a member of the public is they've never used it.
Well, we're in an era now where there can be YouTube broadcast, live streaming of that. Would that be advisable?
ICAC has been doing that for years. ICAC in New South Wales.
The federal court's been doing it. Will?
Yeah, look, I agree. I mean, one possible name would be Geoffrey Nettle himself, who's already across the information here and who's been. Why not appoint him now to be the acting commissioner to investigate this? That's one option. That would certainly speed up the process. But in terms of timeline, we await now. I do think that there is real, I think, impetus on both the commissioner and on the attorney general to really now provide much more information about timelines and about how quickly we're going to be going and what's going to be happening, because it's critical that this has been an important test for the NACC. They've had a second chance to reconsider this. The reconsideration is a good one that they're investigating now, and it now is on them to timely go through this process in an open and transparent way.
The Centre for Public Integrity has been working for years to get up a National Anti-Corruption Commission. As I said, it's been going since July last year. Is this a pathway to redemption for the National Anti-Corruption Commission? Because you're all, I noticed from your body language, distressed and disappointed that this Brereton had determined with the commissioners that there be no action on the Robodebt 6.
Well, if you talk about rehabilitation of reputation, just think about this for a moment. This is a finding by a former High Court judge that, in effect, NACC didn't understand its own jurisdiction to take up a referral from a Royal Commissioner. So that does nothing good toward NACC's reputation. The only person who can rehabilitate NACC's reputation will now be somebody who's not a member of the commission, that is, an acting commissioner, brought in from the outside, who will do the job that the commissioner and the other commissioners should have been doing. So sure, there can be a bit of a rehabilitation, but it's certainly not going to remove the mark left by this.
But that's the personnel that are there. The structure, though, although you've been arguing about public hearings and the high bar for them, but it's your. What I'm trying to point out is your achievement for the Centre for Public Integrity and all those who wanted a federal anti-corruption commission. You're finally getting it. Yeah. With its deficiencies, and this is a way forward for it.
Yep,
Sorry to live in hope.
I'm with you, Quentin. I'm a glass half full man.
Will?
Yeah, I mean, I think the optimistic approach is to say, look, we're now going to have the investigation we should have always had from the beginning, and that hopefully the current leadership of the NACC, Commissioner Brereton and his deputies, will learn from this and won't want to go through this again, so that they will in the future understand a little bit more clearly what the scope of their jurisdiction is and when they should be investigating cases, so that it's a turning point for them, hopefully, optimistically, and But yeah, just on the issue of the Robodebt, I mean, we're now going to get a serious investigation into this by this National Anti-Corruption Commission. That is a very significant outcome, and I think we should not miss that in all this as a really good piece of news out of this.
Geoffrey?
I agree. Will's exactly right. Maybe we've turned a corner. Maybe Commissioner Brereton and his crew can watch what the incoming acting commissioner does and learn a lesson, maybe.
All right. On all these learnings, I hate that term, on all these learnings we hope for the future, particularly for the people affected by one of the cruelest episodes of implementation failure in our mighty nation. Geoffrey Watson, Will Partlett, thanks very much.
Thanks, Quentin.